Well, thanks for coming back for the second part of the antique display case build. This is where we left off in the first video. Now we're going to add some hinges to our door. To keep the door from going in too far when we close it, we need a stop for it to rest against. Here I'm cutting out a piece out of some of the same southern yellow pine. We're just going to glue this piece of stop on. No nails for it. Once I get it lined up in the place, I'm just going to use a few spring clamps to let it sit and dry overnight. For a handle for the door, I'm using a pole I salvaged off an old entertainment center years ago. So that it fits flush, I'm going to cut out a mortise for it. I first use a utility knife to score around the outside edge, and then using a chisel, I gradually mortise it down until the handle fits flush in the door. With the mortise done, it's time to screw the handle on. That fits nice. Knowing that I have an unhealthy obsession with cherry stain, I asked Mrs. Tinkerer her thoughts on what color this should be, and she said special walnut. So that's what I chose to stain it. I think she made a good choice. For the top coat, we're going to use an amber shellac. This is an old-fashioned finish that hardly anybody uses anymore, but it's very appropriate for our piece since we're trying to recreate an antique. This would have been used on the original. Plus it gives it an orange tint that makes it look vintage. I decided to put a final coat of polyacrylic over the whole thing. I don't quite trust the durability of the shellac, and this gives me a little better feeling about it. Now it's time to put the glass on our display case. We're not really using real glass, we're using polyacrylic glass. We're going to cut it to size on the table saw first, and then it should slip into these grooves in our display case. It's just a matter of simply sliding it in. Just a simple matter, just working it in, just easy. Just slip it in, slide it in and be done. Should be easy. Simple task. Yep. Oh, man. As you can tell by the wardrobe change, this is the very next day. I had to build a temporary support in the center and have Mrs. Tinkerer come out and lend me 2 extra hands. I still could have used about 3 more. But in combination with both of us guiding it and this clamp to keep it from spreading apart, along with the center guide, we eventually worried and worked it down into the groove. It was not an easy task. Once I got it in the groove, then I pulled out all the center supports, and I was able to put the back cross piece on, and this locks it into place. I'm replacing the regular zinc screws with some brass screws to make it look more old-timey. I suppose I probably should have hunted up some slotted screws for this, but the Phillips screw was invented in the 1930s, so in theory it could have been on an antique display case. Plus I hate slotted screws. I tell you, installing this glass was the toughest thing I've seen in the shop in a long time. Well, second toughest, I guess. The inside of the display case needs a removable tray. I've made this one out of 1/2-inch plywood, and I'm just easing the edges with a roundover bit so they're not so sharp. Now using regular craft foam, I'm just cutting some pieces to fit on top of the tray. We'll glue it down with spray adhesive. This is going to give us a padding underneath our fabric when we cover it here in a minute. Mrs. Tinkerer helped me pick out this beautiful velvet fabric. It looks very vintage. I'm just wrapping my velvet and stapling it on the back with some short 1/4-inch staples. Now it's time to put some non-skid feet on here. I'm pre-drilling some holes, and now I'm screwing the feet on. These rubber feet will keep it from scooting across the counter, and it'll also protect the counter from getting scratched. Here I have a piece of mirror that I salvaged. I'm going to cut this down and put it on the inside of the door so that it acts as a backdrop inside the display box. I salvaged this mirror from one of those full-length door mirrors, and it has some kind of rubber membrane on the back of it, because every time I score and snap it, it doesn't release completely, and I have to take a utility knife and cut it. But hey, it was free mirror. The edges are kind of sharp, so to smooth those, I'm just using standard sandpaper. Yes, this actually works. You can sand the edge of glass. To adhere it, I'm going to use some clear silicone. I position the mirror and get it where I want it on the door. Then using some cardboard as a pad and spring clamps, I'm going to clamp it in place and let it sit overnight to cure. Well, here we have the finished product. I think it turned out pretty good. Here we see the velvet tray inside and the curved glass front, and you can see the mirrored back inside. Here's the back view of it with our handle to open up the door. There's another good look of the mirror and the velvet inside. Really has a vintage quality about it. I could just imagine this display case on the countertop in an old hardware store or general store, maybe with pocket knives for sale inside of it. I think it'd fit right in. Well, I appreciate you making it to the end of this video series. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. We'll see you next time, and as always, thanks for watching.